think we kind of left off where you were
Back
back
home.
home on leave.
Yeah, and then I was sent to the.
So you
the
never returned back to England after.
no,
Okay.
never went back there.
So after the Normandy invasion, you returned to England for a month or so. You said.
Yeah, a little over
Working in the
a
hospital
little over
there?
a month, and 30-day leave in New York City, the family, and then from New York City, sent me to
California.
Right across in Oceanside.
Mhm.
Yeah, across from Camp Pendleton. At that time, they had a naval base on the ocean side. Pendleton was where it is now. It was just a highway, one way each way. No, just two-way road. Not a freeway like it is now.
And did you know why you were being sent there?
All they just said, you're going to join the beach battalion. As soon as they say beach battalion, I knew that it had to be something amphibious, So then I really realized I was going to be there. And then, of course, they said you'll also train with the Marines because you're their medical group. So I thought my job would be, I'll be with the Marine Corps, their medical thing. And then here I'm back to where I didn't even want anyway,
You knew what the
And
Marines-
here I already gone through Normandy. But it turned out they trained us in when we went to Oceanside, we trained on the ships. They have these boats where they, like they did normally, where you climb down the nets and get into a boat. They bivouac around. They do the same thing, kind of like Normandy, and only a little more extensive. And then we trained there in Oceanside, and then on to plus separate training with the Marines to understand them. But I was with my beach battalion group. They put us on a ship called the Coleman, and we went to Pearl Harbor, and we had picked up some supplies. We picked up some supplies in the Philippines and some other place. Oh, and a Weetalk, the one that they blew up, that island, we would use that as a swimming vacation place. It was interesting, that island, because water was so clear you could see like it was like being in a bath. Water was nice and warm, and in the ocean actually, in a Weetalk. And we'd go swimming. We'd have little beer parties, the Navy, and then we went on back to Pearl Harbor. And when we got there with the supplies and all, they transferred us to another, not all of us, but myself and some other corpsmen, to the USS Bowie, and it's another APA. APA means Auxiliary Personnel Assault. And so I was on that ship. And next thing you know, they were loading a bunch of troops on there. I mean, loads of Army guys. And we were on our way with a big convoy on to way, and we found out actually halfway there that we're going to invade the island of Okinawa. And so I had no idea what Okinawa was, the Pacific. All I know was, oh crap, I'm going to be another invasion, And so it was really a little discouraging for me, because I kept thinking I had hoped to have maybe stateside duty, and here out there. So here I'd been spending most of my time overseas, And when you're overseas, you build up points. They give you points for every month you're overseas. And that is significant. That's why I mention it, because later on I'll be telling you why that became very significant for me. And so we're on the way to Okinawa, and when we hit there, it wasn't like Normandy. It was on the beach. I mean, there was some shelling. They did shelling and so forth like that, but there was some firing and some wounded and so forth, but it wasn't much on the beach. But we went onto the beach because our job was to take care of any wounded that we had. So we set up a deal on the beach from the ship, and the ships were all out. A lot of ships out there because of the invasion.
Can I ask you real quick?
Yeah.
Did the flashbacks from Normandy start to subside once you got back into the training with
No.
Marines and
No, I was occupied with the duties that I had while we were on the ship, like helping in surgeries, and we had appendectomies and so forth like that. It took a while to get over there from Pearl Harbor. So the flashbacks, I would get them, but I kept thinking in my mind, that's that, I'll get over it, But it didn't. It seemed to be getting worse, you see. Because it started when I was, after home on the leave, I started getting it. But then I thought it would subside, but it just kind of, it was not as significant as it was before, but it was like there. And then this new edition of going into another one was bad. So yeah.
Did that, did you start having anxiety about going into another invasion and sort of re-experiencing?
Yeah, I did have the anxiety because already I knew what it was like, you see. And I thought it was going to be similar to Normandy, but it turned out the landing craft, you can go right up to the beach and so forth. See what happened, most of the fighting a lot of it was inland. So when they went in, the Japanese were in caves and dug in, and they really good, and the slaughters was horrible, and what they went through. The tough thing we had with Okinawa was there was a lot of wounded that we got in from after being there for so many days. When the Army went in, then of course that Hacksaw Ridge deal, which I didn't know anything about that at all. I only found that out recently when I saw the picture. Then I realized, my God, I was there, and I was taking care of the wounded was coming off, and I knew we had a lot of wounded. I'm going, boy, they're having it really hell inside there, and so we were taking care of all the wounded there. The Navy problem out in the ships that we had, we had taken some wounded back to the ship, and I'm on the ship, and I had just helped in surgery. I think it was a guy's broken arm and a leg or something like that. I helped, and I was taking a break to go up on deck and have a cigarette. That time I smoked 2 packs a day. And so what happened, I'm smoking a cigarette there, and then all of a sudden I hear the battle station alarm go off. And I heard an alarm, and then big gun went off right near me, the big 5-inch gun we had never, boom! And all of a sudden my ear starts ringing and everything else. And I found out later on, because the ringing didn't stop, that caused me to lose half my hearing on my ear there. So I'm running to my battle station, and where the sick bay and everything else was. And I'm running along the deck, and all of a sudden I see the guns shooting up, and I see all these, I look up and I see these planes, Japanese planes. I never saw anything like this. And then, I kid you not, I'm running all on the deck, and I see that they're across from us, or maybe like 2 football fields away. Battleship New Mexico is sitting there. And I got a picture of it that I found later on. It's sitting there like that. And I see this ship coming in low, and and I could see he comes right over, and he comes low, and I could see his face as he came in low with that stern look at Japanese pilots, and then he veered off and went straight into the battleship New Mexico, the bridge. And when we found out later, he killed 80 people. The explosion was horrendous, and the captain killed 80 people and the captain. I saw that. I just froze there looking at this, and I said, I just saw this man alive, and he purposely killed himself by going into the plane. My job is healing people, and I see a man give up his life. I never saw anything like that. Today we see it. These guys are blowing themselves up and all. But at that time, it was unheard of, you see. Now, and those Japanese kamikaze, what an impression it made on my head, you know. It was just, now I'm 18 years of age, you see. And I saw this, and it just made me think, are we dealing with lunatics? So these people are crazy. And they were purposely coming in. I saw that one happen. Then you hear stories that were way off. You see another explosion. These people they're young pilots that fly with a bomb on it, and that kept them a little slow, so a lot of them got shot out of the air. But those who come down and are aiming at a ship, it's like a bullet. And even if you don't blow them out of the sky, well, like coming there with the guns, and they're coming at pretty big speed, they're going to hit you wherever they're aiming, and the explosion is horrendous. And a lot of ships were sunk, and a lot of guys died, Navy people. And we came close, and that was a nightmare for me because they kept doing it constantly. Then I read later on that they had about 4,000 of them, and only 10% got through. But that was over, say, 400 ships that got damaged, and men died, a lot of men. So if you read the statistics on it, you find it was a lot of men died on the ships in the hull because of the explosions of that ship. It was a horrible thing. So it was like a twofold thing. You had all the big battle going in with thousands of men getting killed inland, and then the kamikaze planes were doing the thing to the Navy, which was it was rough, because I understand earlier at Iwo Jima they started the kamikaze planes, but no one said anything about it. They didn't want anyone to know that they've run into this new crazy thing. But Okinawa, I saw it firsthand. It shook me up, and it shook me up for years, all the time, because I could keep seeing that, you know. And then, of course, the wounded guys at Okinawa, some of them really bad, they came through. Some just died on the beach before they could get to the ships and all that thing, so it was pretty rough.
So did you witness the New Mexico getting hit? Was that before you even landed on Okinawa?
Yes.
Okay.
No, that was after.
That was after. So when did you...
I saw that as clear as day, and when I saw a picture that it was in, and I have a picture of it, I'll show it to you afterwards. When I saw that picture, all of a sudden, it was in the magazine or something, I went, oh my God, I saw that. I was there, and some guy had gotten a picture of it, and it was really an amazing thing. They really took a beating. So go ahead.
So when did you get on the island?
Oh,
The invasion was April 1st?
Yeah, that was April. No, what we found out, I found out the initial invasion was April. We came in right on the end. This was the reinforcement invasion, and it was like May, and that's when Hacksaw Ridge went on too, and that's when that Arizona got hit. So, but all about it was like it was like a second invasion, because it was all thing. But a lot of that's why so many were inside getting wounded. A lot of Marines died and all. This we brought in a lot of soldiers too, see. So, and it was all American. It wasn't like English and British. It was all American that died. 62,000 wounded, 14,000, as I found out, was died. And the Japanese had not lost a battle in 1,000 years. And they were very proud people. And tough fighters. Rather than surrender, because they were told if you're going to lose the battle and you're going to surrender, don't come home. So pride was there, and they either did crazy charges to the guys and were killed. They lost, my goodness, I think the Japanese must have lost over 100,000 or more died because of the making these crazy attacks and so forth, because they're tough, proud people. So, and that is one of the things I mentioned earlier to you about, was that MacArthur, like when we were going to go invade Japan, because they had seen what happened in Okinawa, and they had fought so hard there, and they said, when we go to Japan, they're going to be fighting for their homeland, and they're going to have men, women, and children there fighting, and there's going to be lots of casualties. So when MacArthur found out about the atomic bomb, he said to Truman, don't drop the atomic bomb. We can go in with our forces. He wanted to go in. As I found out, Eisenhower went into Normandy with 9 divisions, see. MacArthur wanted to go in with 14 divisions. And he said, the casualties will only be 100,000, probably, 135,000, like it was nothing. And I saw so much death, and I'm thinking, that's nothing, you know. And that's the thing that always bothered me. And then the statistics they found out later by this other, he became an admiral later, but he was with the White House and so with President Roosevelt, and then also Truman. And he had delivered some facts back to Truman, and he said, the casualty reports with all of these people going to fight to the death based on what happened in Okinawa, the casualties would be 650,000 men, casualties. And then Truman decided, drop the bomb. And that's what he told this guy. That's one of the reasons he did it. And I personally had to go in, because when they dropped the bomb, we thought, second one, we said, oh, we're going back to Pearl Harbor. And they said, no, our base, our invasion spot was Sasebo, Japan. It's a naval base. And they said, go in. So it's an inner harbor to get into that place, and there's hills on each side with guns emplacements. And we could see that when we went in. And if we'd gone in, they would have been shooting us like ducks in the water. And I don't think I would have been here, you know. So I feel sorry that the tragedy and the devastation of Japan from the atomic bomb, but they were warned and warned and warned, and they just didn't heed it, and they kept on. Even after the first atomic bomb was dropped, they still were going to fight. And then the second one, they finally gave in. But which I said, I don't think I would be here today. Definitely not. If that would have been my third invasion, see. And so I feel God, even though I didn't know him well, had protected me. And it was an interesting thing I'll bring up about that, is that my kids, years later, after I'm out and all, I married this wonderful woman, and we had children and so forth, my grandkids were watching a band of brothers. And I walked in on them, and I said, what are you watching? They said, we're watching the Band of Brothers. It was about the invasion of France and Normandy. And then one of the grandkids says, Grandpa, you were there, weren't you? And I said, yeah. But I said, I wasn't with the paratroopers. I was on the beach, you know. And they said, you know, Grandpa, if you would have been killed, we wouldn't be here. And they all come around and they all hugged me. Tears came in my eyes. And I said, they got it. They got it, you know. And they finally realized the progression of things, you know. Here I was saved. So a lot of people have said to me, what are you grateful for now? I said, well, I often wonder, and I ask myself, why did God save me and my buddies died? And then all of a sudden look at my children and I see what they've accomplished and the lives that I have touched. And a lot of people who are not going to be in Japan on that invasion, there would have been so many men that died. And when I speak at different groups, I say to them, there was a man named Mr. Mitsubishi, Mr. Sani, and probably another scientist, young man on the beach that was ready to die when that invasion, the bomb was dropped, and they are living, and they gave us television and a lot of technical things that we use today. And a bunch of Americans have developed things today that lived because they didn't have to go in on that invasion, that developed a lot of things that we use today. So God has a plan. It's just amazing. And I tell people that, and I told my kids that. And then all of a sudden I told my kids, I see what you have accomplished, and I realize that's why God saved me. So you guys can do what you do and say what you want to say. And I'm very proud of what they've done. So that was just one of the things that happened.
So how would you say that your experiences on Okinawa compared to your experiences in Normandy?
They were traumatic, but not as Normandy was worse. Me personally, because again, personally, like I said, when you're dealing with wounded and they're crying and everything else, and depending upon you, you had the same thing in Okinawa with the wounded, but I didn't have the effect of where you're going in and there's firepower around. That didn't happen there. The only firepower I had to go through is when the kamikaze planes came in, and they came on a regular basis. They would shoot down and all, and there was bullets. And then unfortunately, a lot of the ships, when they came in low, would be following them, and as they came low, they're hitting the other ship right across the way. And so a lot of our guys died or anything because of that from their own fire, trying to do a job. So in answering to your question, I would say the Normandy experience was more traumatic for me, maybe had the biggest effect. There was a couple of experiences that happened to me. Okinawa, seeing some of the guys die and so forth like that, and dealing with them there and then on the ship that came off from the caves or Hacksaw Ridge or wherever it was. All I know is I dealt with wounded people, doing them and saving some of them and seeing a lot of them die is traumatic to me. But one of the things that I had to happen to me that was very traumatic for me was when we came from Pearl Harbor after training with the Oceanside, California, and we came on the ship, we did some practice invasions on the islands. I think it was a deserted island they had there at that time. I can't remember which one it was, but it was deserted. We used that for invasions. Well, what happened, they use live ammo and everything like that to make sure so we all feel that feeling. And we were going in, so we're on the beach and we're stayed there for the night. So guys dig in on the beach, or all the way in there. They dug in, and what happened, two guys dug their foxhole or whatever it was near the road, too near the road, and a tank comes and goes over them. And so they said there was two guys that were run over by a tank here while they were sleeping, and they wanted a couple of medics to go over and check. I don't know what the hell they expect us to do, but I happened to be one of them that went over there. And what I saw was like mincemeat, and these guys had just slept there, and that affected me so much because I said, here, there's two guys that died just in practice invasion. I can understand it in real war or whatever it is, but this, unfortunately, these two guys, their parents probably never knew what the real reason they died, because no one's going to say it happened that way. They're going to say he died in action, which was action. But that was very traumatic for me too, and I carried that for years, seeing that mess, on the thing. So that was one of the things that happened. So in answer to your question, Okinawa was not as bad as, the casualties were worse. For me personally, and probably for a lot of other guys, if they went through the both of them, not too many had been in both theaters of war, men. They were either in one or the other. Unfortunately, I happened to be one of the ones that got into two, and I was getting ready for a third one too, which you would think then they say, hey, let's get this guy, give him a break. I didn't get it. I guess they needed to get, they needed corpsmen or whatever it is, because the Japanese were killing them like crazy. Because when you hit the beaches and all, the Japanese would shoot the corpsmen because they had the red helmets and the helmets with a red cross and a band. So that was a target. So they figured kill the medical. They did this in all the other islands, like Iwo Jima and all of these other places, because they figured kill the medical, you kill the morale. And that's where I wound up getting in it, and that's why they needed them. So.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. All I know is that I found this out later, because I kept asking myself, why do they keep picking on me? Why am I going for one? Then I realized, or somebody said, they're killing off the corpsmen. I found that out afterwards, but I didn't know it at that particular time, you see. But it was really...
And on Okinawa, was it the same? You were only armed with your 45. You didn't have any other.
Yeah, 45. That's all. It's only in the event you're pinned down or something. You need to have something that. As a matter of fact, I would love to have kept that 45, but they took it away when I got discharged. So actually, we wound up. We would hit the beach, just your medical pack, and always the stretchers. They'd always have some. I don't know how they get there. It was like magic. The stretchers would be on the beach, or they'd leave them on the beach so you could evacuate the people there. We didn't carry. Maybe some others did, but I never had to carry a stretcher on me, because even though they're folded or whatever it may be, stretchers always wind up on the beach, and that's where you take. You do use the stretcher to help when the guy's on it, to get him on the ship, to get him back to the small boats to the big boats, and that's all. So that's the way it was.
You mentioned the movie Hacksaw Ridge. And,
the what?
You mentioned the movie Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah.
And in the movie, they depict as the wounded men are being hoisted down the cliff.
Right.
Were you in that vicinity?
No, I was on the beach.
Yeah.
There, he was back in there where they have to climb that rope ladder, which I saw the picture finally, and they had the rope ladder. That guy, I take my hat off to him. What a fantastic guy. Go back and forth and save 70-some people, he had to go into there and pick up the wounded and drag them along the ground. And boy, I know how that is, and drag them that distance. My heart went out to him, Matter of fact, I cried when I saw that, because I know I had to drag some people for, short distance just to get them behind a body or some barrier, and because you don't want to be doing anything in the open. But him doing that and then lowering them down that thing. But I got a lot of wounded, but we didn't know where they would come. We thought it was all in the caves and everything else. I didn't find out anything about Hacksaw Ridge till when, I was out here when they made the picture. Then I would sit there, and I almost fell over when I was watching, and I said, what's that? And I looked at the date and everything, and I said, oh my God, that was the wounded I took care of. And it was horrendous. So the wounded was bad. What I had to go through outside of the medical treatment was not as bad, there. But the kamikaze planes psyched me out. It was something I'd never seen, people doing that, so it's the way it goes, So now when I came back we took the wounded after we went to Sasebo. When we went to Sasebo, Japan, after Okinawa, we were on the way to Okinawa. I mean, to the invasion. All we know is we took the wounded back from Okinawa to the Pacific. I mean, to Pearl Harbor. When we got to Pearl Harbor, they gave me a 3-day leave, and then he said, "Okay, come back." And all of a sudden, I see they're loading up more troops and supplies onto the ship. And I said, "What's the deal?" They said, "We're going out next day or so." And I said, "It got to be big. It's got to be Japan." And so we were on the way. And I think halfway there, we were talking about it. The scuttlebutt was always, it's got to be Japan. And then I kept thinking to myself, wow, will I make it this time, And then after we got closer to it, then they told us Sasebo, Japan, it's a naval base. That would be our destination to invade. That was the Army personnel and our group. The others had other beaches and other areas. But when that atomic bomb was dropped, and I thought that's it, boy, that's maybe that'll make them think. But then they said, no, it's continue on. And then finally, when they dropped the second one, then they said Japan surrendered. And we thought, back to Pearl Harbor. And so they said, no, go in. So then we occupied Sasebo. We went through all of that. But the beautiful thing was this time, when we're going into the beach, the Japanese and all are waving to us. And what a relief. Now, the interesting thing, when we occupied Sasebo, Japan, we were there for about a month, almost a month and a half. I don't remember whether it was a month and a half or 2 months, but it was a little over a month. And then before we went back with whatever wounded or personnel we had, we would go into the town, and they gave us like $2 of Japanese money, and that was a lot of money. I was making $50 a week, a month, but they gave us some Japanese money. We walk into a store, and you could buy things for like 10 cents, a nickel, a quarter, and then all of a sudden there's a tea set, beautiful Japanese tea set in the store, at the Sasebo. And the guy, I'm looking at the thing, and an officer walks in, and I think they were selling the tea set for 30 cents or 50 cents or something like that, which was a lot. I mean, and the officer walks in and he goes, "I'll give you $1 for that." And the Japanese guy looks at him, "You say $1?" And they go, "Yeah, I'll give you $1." So he gives to him. Then the next thing I know, the prices got up in the next few days. I figure they're going to pay it, and that's the way. It was an interesting experience, But the time we had there, we had to be careful because the Japanese, we were always suspicious, but they were cautious, worrying about us too. But we had passwords, like when we camped out, we had guards, and we used words like they changed they said who goes there, and we changed it. So they used Mickey Mouse characters. So the guy would say, "Who goes there?" And I remember coming back from shopping, and I'm going there, and our guy goes, "Who goes there?" And I go, "Mickey Mouse." The guy says, "Okay, Donald Duck," and I go through. But he scared the hell. I figured he was going to shoot because some of those guys get so nervous, But it was really an interesting thing. But you had to be careful on it. So we finally wound up, after they finished there, where they loaded us up. The buoy came back, loaded us up, and we went back to Pearl Harbor and dropped off any wounded or people we had. And then we go back with whatever other troops and so forth we had back to San Pedro. And so when I was at San Pedro, they gave me, I think, a 2 or 3 day pass. So I come back, and all of a sudden I find out we're leaving in the morning to go out to the Pacific for 3 months. And so I happen to go by where the yeoman is, that's the secretary there. And I see the all-nav bulletin there. That's the Navy bulletin. They put in things for the sailors to check every day to find out what's going on, news. And I see if you have 31 points, you can be discharged. The war was over. Japanese is over. Germans had surrendered already. And I look and I said, 31 points. I got 33 points, I figured out. So I called the yeoman. Now they're leaving in the morning. I called the yeoman and I said, I got 33 points. He says, you're full of crap, you know. And I said, no, check my record. He called and he looked, calls the captain and says, Gutman's got 33 points. The captain says, get his butt off the ship. So he said, use my dinghy and get him into San Pedro. So that my shipmates packed my bag. This is now December. And my birthday's coming up and Christmas. I had missed 2 Christmases and I was going to be home for the 3rd Christmas. And I go there to San Pedro, I give him my papers, and the guy said, well, we got to finish off the papers. So they gave me some money and said, take a 24-hour pass, go to LA. So I went there, even stayed at a motel, had a good time, and then came back. They had my papers ready to be discharged. I was on a train. I was home just the day before my birthday on the 19th. I walked there and my family didn't even know I was coming home. Here I went in at 135 pounds. I came out at 170. Muscle, you know. And they looked and they were just thrilled. So they threw a big party. I was home for Christmas. And it was just, I guess, my second best Christmas I've had. Because when you're away, you really miss Christmas, you know. And then I was talking to a veteran just the other day who just came back from Iraq. And I said, you know, it's interesting, when I was there, we would write letters, we call them V-mail, you know. And I said, and they would read them over and redact things if you said something that was wrong. And then they mailed it off to your relative. I said, today, you guys can get on the phone, you can look at the person you're talking to, talk to him clear across the world. And he said, that's true, I did that with my wife, you know. But I said, how do you keep the secrecy? He says, oh, we're told certain things you're not to say, and if you do, there's a problem. So that was it. So it's a whole new world today on that thing. But I just say one thing, war is hell any way you look at it. Any way you look at it, it's hell. And people say, would you do it again? I said, yes, I would. If I felt the purpose was right like I did then, I would do it any time. I remember speaking when I was at the World War II Museum. The guy, after I finished, he said to me, you know, Jack, you're a hero. And I said, no, I'm not a hero. I says, you know who the heroes are? From the general all the way down to the cook. Every man that does his job that he was trained to do are heroes because they worked as a team. And as long as we stay as a team, we will always win. And then he says, I wish I could have had that on the video because we had finished, you know. So I said, but no, I mean that sincerely. And that is true. And so it's one of those things. And so it's been an honor for me to really like remember people and kind of just touch lives, you know. An interesting thing I just have to kind of tell you, when things were getting real rough with me before I finally got my pension, I took a job at Walmart. I was working as a cashier. I was about 88 years old. I didn't know if they'd take me, but I was a manager of a thrifty drugstore, and so I had a lot of retail experience. So I said to myself, God, you got me here. I was a Christian now already, because in show business, I'll tell you that quickly too. But when I said, God, I'm in this Walmart. I says, I feel like I'm on the bottom of the totem pole. And I says, I know it's a good outfit, but what do you got me here for? I used to make good money, and here I am, you know, working at $10 an hour or whatever it was. And I didn't have the money, and there was no pension thing then. And he kind of impressed me with touch lives. Well, I started telling people as they came to the check stand whenever I had an opening, how's life treating you? And the guy said, life sucks. And I said, well, I went through that, and then I found God. And the guy said, does it work? And I would tell him. So I got a chance to touch lives, giving them, tell them about God. Well, one time a woman came through. She was pregnant. And I was asking her a question, and how you feeling about it? She said, well, I'm having a lot of problems. And she was pouring her heart out to me, and we had the opening. It was just quiet then. So she's telling me all the problems. She's pregnant. And finally, I said to her, I'm going to take a break in a few minutes. If you want to wait, I'll talk with you. So she did wait for me, and I took the break, and we sat and talked. And I talked to her, I prayed with her, and then she said, well, thank you so much, and she left. Well, almost a year later, I injured my back at Walmart, and they helped settle with me and everything, so that helped a little bit. But a year later, I'm going to do a show for a church, a benefit, and it's an outside deal. And the chairs are all lined up, and I'm ready to go on in 15 minutes. And I hear this woman in the audience, in the front chairs there, sitting there with a baby and a husband. And she yells, Jack. I didn't have a name tag on or nothing. So I go, do I know you? And she goes, yeah, did you work at Walmart almost a year ago? And I said, yeah. She said, so I'm that gal who was pregnant, and you talked to me, and you prayed with me, and you changed my life. And I said, well, thank you. And her husband says to me, is this the Jack you always keep talking about? She said, that's him. And he says, thank you for my wife. And she says, you see this little blue-eyed baby boy? I said, yeah. And she says, I named him Jack after you. I cried. It was so touching. It was like God let me know that this is one person of all the people you've talked to that you've reached and changed their life. And that's got me really thinking about doing that to touch lives. Just like you're doing, Zach, is what you're doing there, and with this interview and the other interviews, there was great men there in that book I saw, and the other people you talked to. It's a reminder to all the future people that not to forget our comrades that had fallen or were wounded, you know. And that's basically, I think touching lives have been one of the most important things I've ever done in my whole life, from show business and everything else. Because when I spent my time in show business, it was, I went in, you know, people making like $50 a week. And I went into show business. My uncle got me in it. When I went in it, my first paycheck in show business, because I did he had a dance and singing act, and he had a lot of bookings. So he was in Jacksonville, Florida. And so he happened to be at my house in New York, and I did a few jokes for him, my father told him. And next thing you know, he says, very funny, once you work up a routine and contact me. So I did, and I did a little routine for him on the phone. And he said, I'm going to send you some money, and I'll have you come into the act. So I went down there and got into show business. And my first paycheck was $250 a week. Then I was making $500 a week, and $700 a week, and then $1,000 a week. And I drove around a nice car, wore nice suits. It was like the whole thing. And so I went under the name of Jackie Walker, and had lots of interesting experience working for the mafia, which I didn't know at that time either, but I found out there were mafia people, but they were good people. When you work for them and you don't mess around with them, they're really good people. I mean, they're like family and all. But boy, mess them up, and you are in trouble, because I remember working for this one guy in Florida, and finally I had been bringing people in constantly. I was held over there a couple of months at this one club. And finally I said to him, because I got an offer for $750 a week do it at the Cavallero Club in Charleston, South Carolina. It's a huge club. Somebody had heard me, and they were going to book me there for a few weeks, and with an option of picking it up. So I told my boss there that I'm leaving for there. And he said, you what? I was bringing in people. And he used to hug me, say, I love you, Jackie. Jackie Walker, you're my man. And that was the name I wonder, Jackie Walker. And then finally, when I told him that, he says, come in the office. And I'm not kidding you when I'm going to tell you. He When in the office, he reaches, he takes out his gun and lays it on the table. And he lets loose with profanity that, like I used to hear from sailors, that, you know, in the roughest times. And he let loose and said, "You're going to leave me after I've done this for you," and that. And he scared the hell out. I'm 21 years of age, you know, and he scared the hell out of me. And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I got a guy who's got comedy like me, so I'll go and do this. I'll stay here for another week. I'll get this guy to come here, do an audition for you. If you like him, fine. If you don't like it, I'll stay another week or so, and then before I go." So I canceled the other one for a few weeks, and a guy came, and he liked this guy, and I said, "Okay." And he said, "You're going to come back, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll come back. I'll do the couple of weeks for there, and then I'll go." When I left, I said, "The hell with him. I'm not coming back. No way." After that, because then I found out he was with the mafia, you know, all that. And the other club I was going to in Charleston also was owned by the mafia, but they were just great people. So it was quite an experience, because that club was something. It was a no drinking state, and yet the club served drinks, but they poured it from pitchers, no bottles, and there was no gambling was allowed. They had the dice table there. The tables would fall down when the police did their raid, which they were paid to do all the time, and it was all arranged because someone paid them off apparently. And it was funniest thing on all. And people they didn't use chips; they used money, dollars, and so people could get away. But when they finally would read the raid, because whoever had some money, nobody knows because they haven't had a chance to count it. But the guys were all up and up because of the fact this was mafia, you see, and so no one wanted to screw around. But my wife, I got her a job as a beat by shake girl, where you take 3 dice and you throw it, and then the guy makes a bet, and in the beginning, and he throws dice. Now she throws a dice, and that number of 3 dice, if it's higher than his, then she wins the bet. So the bet can be $1 to, I guess, 20 if you want. 20 was a high bet then, you know. So, so she's first night. She has all this cash, about $250, and they make a raid. She got so scared, she took the money and ran into the ladies' room, and she stayed there for half an hour or so. And the guys come in, they cannot touch the drinks, even though they smell alcohol, because they got to find bottles. So if they don't find bottles, which they already got rid of, they left, and the table was all folded over, tablecloth where the dice table was, and drinks are sitting on top of it, you know, and people are smoking in there. So they just walk around, make their play. But Joe had left the dice on the table because she was scared. She runs. She did. And so the guy, head of the police department, picks up the dice, goes over to the boss and says, "Tell your beat by shake girl not to get too nervous next time," and he gave it to her. Well, she comes out 10 minutes later, and he says, "Honey, next time don't get so nervous and all that. You left the dice on the table." She said, "I quit. Here's your money." And that was it. No one could talk her into it, so that was it. She had a good half an hour job. But it was quite an experience, I'll tell you that. But it was a laugh. But I'll tell you one thing, we've had a lot of good experience, and I learned. But all through this time, when I'm going through show business and everything else, I was getting flashbacks. And I realized that I've got a problem, you know. And she used to get me, and I used to think, well, I'm having a bad dream. I never told her. She never knew what was happening.
Did she know what you had been through?
No, she didn't even know anything. I just told her, I didn't talk about Navy or anything. I talk about war, nothing. Kept it here. I just excelled in my show business and everything else. The crazy thing in show business, I was doing very well. And then finally, I didn't really know God still, after all the war and everything. And a guy from the orchestra, I'm taking a break, I have a cup of coffee. And this guy says, orchestra guys are wild, you know. And all the groups, because they got groupies, that women, that they like show business people. I ran into a lot of that myself. And so this guy who's a wild guy, he says to me, Jack, do you know Jesus Christ? And I said, I've heard of him. And he said, yeah, have you ever accepted him? And that was odd for me to hear it from the guy from the orchestra. And I said, yeah, I've heard of him. And he said, have you ever accepted him? And I said, no. He said, would you like to accept him? And I said, no. And he said, why not? I said, because I've got some pet sins I'm enjoying, and I don't want to give them up. And then he said to me, it was a challenge. I kid you not. He said, why don't you accept Jesus as your Savior, but tell him you got these pet sins that you don't want to give up, that if he doesn't want you to have it, let him take it away. Now that was a challenge to me. So all of a sudden I said to him, okay, and I said exactly what he just said. I told him, I accept you, Jesus, as my Savior. I said, I got these pet sins, you know what they are. And I says, but if you don't want me to have it, you're going to have to take it away because I don't want to give them up. Little by little, things changed in my life. I had to change some material I was doing in show business, which still wound up funny, you know. And then I wound up with, my whole life changed from that, never had to look back. And I kept growing in the Lord. And my whole life has just been a whole different since I found that. And I put that in my book. And I tell people that I know what it was to live the dark side of life, but I've never been more happier than when I finally made that decision, you see. So it's just changed my whole life. So my life now, in the last 10 years now, has been touching lives. I've told you this before, see. And I find it just like what you do, and people that, like I tell people that work in hospitals or doctors or anyone or ministers or whatever, you got a job and you're touching lives. You have no idea what you're doing, which is great, because you make it, and you pray that God will give you a good living for it, because you got to live, you know. And God will take care of that. I know that with all my heart, you know. And it's just made a big difference. So
the flashbacks that you would experience,
Yeah.
Would they come on mainly in the form of nightmares, or would it happen during the day?
Most of them would happen when I'm in my sleep, dream. However, I could be, say, driving along, and now a lot of it has dissipated totally. I don't have that problem anymore, not like it used to be. I could be driving along and something would trigger something I see, some accident or something happens and it triggers, and all of a sudden I see it all. It's almost like sometimes I had to pull the car over to the side because it's very traumatic for me. And that's when I started realizing I got a real problem. I got to do something, you know. And everyone has a different type, as I've said. Mine, as I said, was all magnified, and when I say magnified, I mean everything. The wounds, the body parts, everything is huge, and it's like a massive nightmare, and it's very frightening. And then what happens in your mind, I still don't understand it even today, even with my therapy, of why you do stupid things. I did things with, in post-traumatic stress, you do things that are crazy. Like, for instance, I used to tell my bosses off, you know. They do something. I remember one guy I was working for, and he would yell at the other salesmen, you know. I remember a sewing machine company coming. He would yell at the salespeople, call them names and everything like that. So I remember when I was going to ask for a transfer to Los Angeles from New York, and I went over to him and I said to him, you know, you're the worst manager I've ever worked for in my life. You're crude and everything. I started telling him, and he started saying, I don't like what you say. And I said, I don't give a damn what you say, whether you like it or not. I'm leaving here anyway. And he said, well, I could screw you up on your job. I said, you try it, go ahead. I don't really care, because I'm just want to let you know you're a bum. I've told other people they did things wrong, bosses that they're doing wrong, and I didn't like what they did. I should have shut my mouth, but I often wonder, why did you do this? Why did I do that or this and that? I almost came to a point where you do so many crazy things. I even have it in my book, as I say, I hold back nothing. I almost, because I was financially in a real problem, I almost was going to commit an armed robbery. I was all set, and then God stepped in with working through different people, changed it. It was just ironic. It's in my book and all. I didn't hold back on it, but changed my life completely, which I could have gone off. So people don't realize what happens in post-traumatic stress, and that's why a lot of guys are committing suicide. Thank God I didn't get that close to where I was thinking of suicide. And I think it's because of the fact that I decided I was not going to go into a depression, that I was going to try to exceed, so maybe all of that would go away, So I exceeded, and when I worked for an insurance company, I became the top salesman with them. When I worked for a thrifty drugstore, when I went there and I started as a manager, and I started working with them. And then I said, how long will it take to become a manager? And the guy said, take you probably about 6-7 years. I said, I'm going to do it in 2 to 3. The guy laughed at me. He said, good luck. 2.5 years I was a manager. I made up my mind to do this, and I became successful. Then I screwed up even as a manager. I did something where I gave a prescription to a customer, which I found out I really didn't do anything wrong. I was a manager, and he had gotten a prescription for a year, And the guy was supposed to bring he said he didn't have the prescription here. He had it at home, but he needed it now. He'd been getting it for a year, so I gave it to him. Well, thrifty drugstore said you broke the law, and they gave me a choice. You either resign or we'll fire you. 9 years I was with them. And I finally decided, okay, I'll just resign, just stress. And they put that down as it, and so this way I could, they don't have the word fired, but then I found out talking to a lawyer and all that they had no business to do it. In my position, I could have done what I did, but it was too late, so I let it go. But these are crazy things you do, a lot of crazy things, and that's only part of it. Almost lost that poor woman with some of the dumb things I did. So post-traumatic stress has a lot of ramifications that a lot of people still don't know. And I feel sorry. I beg people every day when I speak anywhere, and I say to veterans, please, please get help. It's open to you. You may not realize it now, but there's light on the other side. I never thought I'd ever be where I'm sitting right now, and content, happy. Got a wife that loves me, and a family that adores me and loves me. And I tell veterans, it can be for you too. All you got to do is just seek the help. Don't worry about what you went through and of the past. Look what you can have in the future. And I beg them, please do it. You'll be happy. Get any therapy you can, And my daughter does one therapy, which I found out is good. You ever hear of where they do like tapping, and it has a big effect on the body, where you tap and you say things to yourself. Well, they have found this has worked twice as fast as any other therapy. And she's been doing it with people, and she's helped a lot of people that way. I talked to one therapist one time from the veterans, and they said they knew about this, but it was just a little too expensive for them to do it. And I say to any veteran, if you can get help, don't start with the pills or whatever it may be. Seek help and you'll find it. I didn't have to take any pills or anything like that. I just, through anger, cursing, whatever I had to do, I finally got through it, and I'm a happy man now.
Do you have any regrets in your life?
Regrets? I have regrets of maybe some of the things I've said to some people, or that I shouldn't have said, and they're gone now, so I can't say anything to them now. But you have things. If I could do anything like I did before, I would do it again. The regrets. The one grateful thing is I've learned an interesting thing. If you forgive somebody for what you do, what you've done, they don't have to be there. All you have to do, there's a way you can just put it in all writing, put down your the things you're sorry for, what you did to them, and bring out the good and bad things you did for them, and then you would say, I forgive you for that, because it's not only it doesn't really help them because they don't see it, but it frees your mind up. And when you do that, you write all these things down. You make amends. I'm sorry I ever did this to you. And you write all these amends. My daughter taught me this, and then so you write the amends and you write all the good and bad things, and then finally you wind up saying, I forgive you for this, and then you say, I do this so I can go on with my life. Now you take that, all of these things you've written, and you find a person that you trust, and you read it to them. It's like a priest, you go to a priest. Only you must get somebody who's not going to give you any advice back. All you tell them is you just say, I want to just read this letter to you, and what would you do not give me any back questions, or don't give me any advice on anything. Just listen to what I say, and if I break down crying, don't touch me unless I ask you for a hug. And then you read this thing. It's therapeutic, believe me. And you wind up, you read this letter out, and then when you finish reading it, you've said it to another human being, and then either weeks or a month at least going by, you'll be free of all the problems. So in answering to the regrets and anything like that, I've done this with the people that I have died and I can't do anything about, and I've freed myself up from that. The regrets of maybe when I was a manager, if I would have done this and instead of that, I would have had that. I can't go back to those things because it's in the past. So I've gotten rid of it, and I just look forward to the future to find happiness, and I find it with God, touching lives. And when even my book, I get people to write me and say, I read your book and you changed my life. That's gratification to me. I don't need the money for it. I'm just grateful to it, and I mean that sincerely. So as far as that goes, and I don't, the experiences I've had were just experiences. I've learned from it, the hard way in many cases, but I've learned, and I tell the veterans, you can also find happiness if you just seek it out. And I beg them to do it.
So if you had any advice for my generation or future generations, what would you be able to offer?
Oh, I would tell them, I love your generation. You've got all the modern conveniences and things like that. And I tell them, the one thing, that if you could do anything, this little cell phone that you have always with you all the time, don't let this master you. Because I have found in many cases, I'm talking to a young person, and then all of a sudden they just pick up their cell phone and they start texting and so forth while I'm there, or in a group and all that. And so I turn to them and I say, was that an emergency? And then they say, no, it was just a friend calling me. And then I said, I really would appreciate it. What you're really saying to me, when you pick up your cell phone and you start doing this, you're telling me that my cell phone is more important than you. And I says, is that cell phone more important to me? And they say, oh my God, no, I didn't realize it. And I had a couple of young people put away the cell phone and never pick it up while we're there. So I think this cell phone thing is dominating the life of a lot of people. And that's something they should be more cautious of. It's a great thing because it's a great communicator. I mean, I love my cell phone. I can get so many facts and everything from it. But the young people today, they got a lot going for them. What I would like them to know is this. Look back in a little history and like the World War II or the Vietnam people, all the sacrifices, all the military people, or the people that died to protect them, would just remember it, and they remember that they can say anything they want to say, or do, or protest, or do anything they want, which is okay with me, as long as they remember that these people that died made that all possible for them. And that's it. Otherwise, I love the younger people. I've had so much respect because I've seen so many good things happening.
And if you could say anything to those men who died protecting our freedom, what would you say to them?
I would say, I saw you at the beaches, and I've seen you cry and die, and some of you got well, which I'm grateful for. But I take my hat off to you for having the courage to fight for your country and to do the things you had. I didn't have to kill anyone. I know you people had to, and I know God will take care of all of that. But I admire you. I will always praise you, and I'll always try to talk for you and defend you. And I love you with all my heart, and to my dying day, I don't know how many years I will have. I'm 93 now. I don't know how many months or years God is for me, but I will always be fighting for you and reminding people that you are a great guy, a great team, and as a team, we have won a great war, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Is there anything else that you'd like people to know about you that you'd like to share before we conclude?
I have found that I don't push, when I speak to anyone, I don't like to push religion or anything like that. But I have found in my life personally, finding God in my life, whatever way you want to find it, whatever church you go to or whatever type of religion, but if you would just realize that there is some higher power, it can help change your life a great deal. Because I've gone through so many hardships, and the one thing that kept me going, even in my worst time, was that I always knew God loved me, and if I was to die, I'll be with Him, and that's an important thing to me. I believe it with all my heart, and it's helped me a great deal, because I know what it was, like I said before. I know what it was to live on the dark side of life, and I know what it is now, and it's a lot better on this other side, and I encourage you to try it.
Well, I want to thank you very much for sitting down and sharing your experiences with me, and thank you for your service.
It's been my pleasure, and I thank you so much. I'd like to stay in touch with you and find out how you do, and I got you. Do you have an email? Or? Yeah, I think I don't know if I wrote it down. I know I have your address and phone number, but I'd like your email if you can.
Yeah,